All right, so now I'll give my official welcome. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Julie Langenkamp. I'm Product Marketing Manager at ZenOptics, and I am thrilled to have you here. And just a little bit of background about what today's event is like. We created these Zen Talk series because at ZenOptics, we have a really rich network of colleagues and advisors and friends, and some people who are all three of those things, who are brilliant industry experts. And we wanted to be able to share their valuable insights beyond just what we get to hear internally. So we wanted to bring those insights to you. So we created Zen Talks to kind of be a conversational, yet informative event. And so today we are thrilled to have session 2 of our Zen Talks with Claudia Imhoff. Claudia is a brilliant female pioneer in data and I didn't mean to embarrass you, sorry. A female pioneer in data and analytics, and has authored many articles for technical and business magazines and co-authored 5 books. She teaches and keynotes at conferences around the world, and has also founded the Boulder BI Brain Trust, which is a consortium of independent industry analysts and consultants. And as our ZenOptics host today, we have Khera Sood, who is one of our internal thought leaders. She is the head of product and technology at ZenOptics, and she has a rich background in product and program management that fuels our innovation internally and also drives customer success. So we are thrilled to have you both here today. Thank you so much. For anybody in the audience who missed the first Zen Talk with Claudia, first of all, it's available on demand at our website. Shameless plug there. But also, I wanted to just give a little bit of a recap. We discussed the challenges that come with self-service analytics and the potential impact of that on the organization. And I think everybody on the call would recognize that self-service analytics is wonderful for driving organizations to be more data-driven, but also it can create a lot of problems when you have more people creating and using analytics and they're free to do whatever they want. So with more people using and creating analytics, the proliferation and the sprawl creates kind of an analytics swamp, as Claudia said last time. And it can create differing results from similar analyses, or a lack of confidence that you're using the right asset for the decisions that are being made. And without governance and oversight over the creation and utilization of these assets, decisions can often be made on the wrong information. And so with that leads us into today's discussion, and we're going to talk about about how to tackle some of those challenges and what that looks like, and the role of oversight and governance relative to self-service. So, Claudia, would you help us set the stage? You know, self-service can mean a lot of different things to different people. So, would you help set the stage with the definition and some of the background when we talk about it, what that means to you and what we mean?
You bet. Happy to. But before I start, I do want to say thank you to ZenOptics. What a wonderful opportunity for me, and as well as for those of you listening. I hope you get a lot out of this presentation. We're going to run it more like a conversation as opposed to 2 talking heads. Hina's going to join me in the conversation with her insight. She has a lot of really good insights. So I'm very excited to hear from her as well. But let me start off with self-service. I did a research paper for TDWI a while back, and this was kind of with Colin White, my good buddy. And this was kind of the definition that we came up with, and some thoughts about that definition. The definition itself was that self-service analytics consists of the analytical environments, and you'll notice I'm saying environments, because there's never one, that enable business users to become more self-reliant and less dependent on IT. They have their own wallets. They can they can haul out their credit card, swipe, and have a cloud instance almost immediately, right? The gotchas are the next 2 things. The first one is that self-service analytics does not equate to analytics self-sufficiency. We are not saying that every one of these data scientists, business analysts, whatever it is, all these people doing analytics are islands unto themselves. They shouldn't be. That's a terrible waste of effort, and you'll hear that a little bit later on as well. The idea is that they're creating something for the company, and the company should have access to it. The way that we get access to the analytics made by others is through some form of governance. And the governance can help us ensure trust in the analytics. Who developed it? How did they develop it? And so forth. Confidence. Is it the right algorithm? Is it the right widget in my dashboard? And so forth. And that must lead to better decision-making based on better analytics. And that's the whole point of self-service, is not to isolate yourself in your own little self-service world, but be able to find other like minds and like analytics so that you're not reinventing the wheel. On the next slide, I'm going to talk about 4 key objectives to self-service. And the first one is to make the analytic tools easy to use. That was first and foremost in any business intelligence or any data science technology or AI or anything else, was to make it easy to use. Not everybody's a whiz at coding or anything else. They want just point and click kind of ease. The second one is to make analytics easy to consume and enhance. I'm going to be talking about this shortly with TDWI about, data interpretation. If you make the analytics so complex that nobody can understand them except you, then you're wasting your time. The third one is to make the analytic solutions fast to deploy and easy to manage. How do I find what somebody else has already made? Am I reinventing a wheel? What else is being developed out there? And then the last one, of course, is to make it easy to access all analytics. And that's where the analytics catalog, if you will, comes in, some central marketing place, if you will, for these beautiful analytics, whether they're reports or dashboards or visualizations or whatever they are. Unfortunately, self-service can degrade rather rapidly into complete chaos without governance. You know it, I know it. We've seen it all over the place. The best intentions fall short of the actual goal. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Hina, because I want to hear your thoughts about self-service analytics as well.
Thank you, Claudia. I mean, I couldn't agree more. I think there's been a huge shift. I think it's been a pendulum shift in what we thought of analytics, 20 years ago to where we are now. And it's a good thing. It's a good thing because we're empowering people to really use the data, right, to make those decisions. But with self-service analytics comes that responsibility of providing the guardrails, so as to speak. Like, we look at it as the ability to really have an environment where we're promoting those self-service analytics, the producers and the consumers, to really have that marketplace to collaborate and gain the most out of a self-service analytics initiative, which is sort of core and fundamental to any analytics program today in an enterprise, large, medium, or small. So it's more about how do you make sure that that last statement you have at the bottom of your slide does not happen, right? Because it is possible, and it is very evident in customers that we work with today very closely, that self-service has to a certain extent transformed into chaos, but they have recognized that and have started working towards enabling the analytics governance that brings it into sort of mainstream, right? And establishes governance around analytics and not just data. So I totally agree, and looking forward to more discussion on this.
Well, let's get into the governance piece, because that's the next slide. I have a definition up there. Yeah, it's one that I came up with a while back. Analytics governance is the orchestration of people, processes, and the technology to enable an organization to leverage access and utilization of analytic assets as an enterprise asset, not just as my own little set of analytics that nobody can touch. The problem one of the things about governance is that there are these two opposing forces. There's that idea of unfettered access, discovery. I can do whatever I want. Versus that need for permission. Stopping someone from analytics in a way that we would.
Claudia,
Again,
if I may interrupt for a minute, we had some audio problems. Would you mind repeating that? Because I think that point about the two opposing forces, one offering unfettered access while also trying to provide some management and oversight. So I don't want to steal your words, but would you mind repeating what you just said, because we missed it?
I think you pretty much just said it. It is two opposite forces. The need for unfettered access to anything and everything throughout the enterprise. If it exists, I want to look at it. Versus that granular permissions, granular privacy enforcement, so that we don't misuse information or fall out of compliance or have a serious problem with regulatory agencies. Mm-hmm. So those are the two opposing factions. Khera, I know you have many thoughts about this, so I would love to hear from you about your thoughts about this.
Yeah, I think, like I was alluding to the fact that there has been a huge focus in the last decade or so on data governance. And I think that is absolutely critical. But along with that, the analytics governance component is almost, mandatory in my mind, right? And it sort of layers on top, and it's a top-down view, because today the creation of those analytics is so rapid and rampant that if we don't govern what we're creating from the top-down approach, the bottoms-up approach sort of will not really make sense at this point, right? And you're just going to spend time and energy on that data layer without looking at where the production layer is consuming that data, but how are they really consuming it? So at ZenOptics, when we talk about analytics governance, the three key pieces in your definition really stand out: the people, the process, and the technology. The technology is not going to solve it all. We've seen it very closely, that it is a combination of people, process, and technology that brings it together, because you're trying to solve a problem for the end users, working with sort of the super users or the power users, and ultimately the platform owners, right? So all of these constituents, right, in an organization need to come together to really be able to understand how the analytics are being created and consumed. And that metadata around the analytics usage is a gold mine, right? And that is what we as ZenOptics are trying to sort of really use to drive analytics governance, because it is the metadata on the analytics and its usage that helps sort of build a foundation for analytics governance.
Yeah, my favorite expression is metadata is a love note to the future.
Yes.
I think
I didn't mean to jump ahead, but
Go ahead. Let's talk a little bit about the key characteristics of a successful analytics governance environment. My first one is my favorite one. It is absolutely necessary that we have executive oversight and support. It goes along with my second point up there, and that is that this is a program. It's not a project. It's not a one and done, dust your hands off, you're finished. The whole idea of having an analytics catalog is to keep it up to date, keep it fresh, and make sure that everything is the way it should be. So that means that we need that executive oversight and support for the long haul, not just the short hop. Mm-hmm. There's also that idea of collaboration and cooperation across the enterprise. It's certainly not easy to get departments sometimes to work with each other. I'm going to touch on prioritization over expediency, because I think we need to understand that anytime we're developing some kind of governance environment, it needs to be the priority. Now, it may be expedient that we get analytics out in a hurry, but we need to take the time to make sure we register those analytics, we vet them, we make sure we understand what's going on. And that, I think, Khera, you have a lot to say on these topics. Arbitration and monitoring throughout the analytics analytics pipeline. I'm actually going to let you talk about that because I think you know much more about it probably than even I do.
No, I think I will add on to what you just said. You're definitely an expert in the area, Claudia, and I'm really glad to be able to work with you on this. Because I think the executive oversight and support is really the most important, but the rest of some of these things sort of transform into then the execution of that program, like you said, right? So it is not a project; it is a program. To execute on that program, you've got to bring sort of a technical and a business track together. It's not I'm just going to go implement a technology. It's all about, well, how am I going to do that? Who am I going to bring along with me? Who are the champions? Who's going to really help prioritize that I need to focus on maybe looking at what I have out there first and then sort of building my catalog so that I build that trusted marketplace, right, for everyone to collaborate? Or is it that I want to sort of start out with showing what I have first and then getting the feedback, right? So there's a couple of different ways in how you can do this, but the arbitration and monitoring is an execution aspect of how you would run the analytics governance program, because there's different ways in approaching, sort of how you look at the content first. Do you rationalize it, or do you sort of make it available and you have your who we call our analytics stewards, right? Sort of participate in this program. And as a result of participating in this program, they're inherently building, trust, but they're also promoting their content. So it becomes a really great way for them to make sure that they're not just working in a silo, like you said. We don't want these data scientists to be working in a silo. We don't want the data engineers to be working in a silo. They need to know what's out there. And so it all goes together. And I think those are the key characteristics that make it all work. It's like the recipe for success.
All right, let's talk about some of the challenges. Certainly, there are also many benefits, but I think one of the biggest challenges is the new deployment methods out there. Like I said, if you've got a credit card, you can have a cloud instance almost immediately, and so can you, and so can you, and so can everybody. So we've got the new deployments. Is some of it going to stay on premises? Is some of it in a public cloud or a private cloud? Most enterprises, and I think it's going to stay this way for the duration, most enterprises have some kind of hybrid. It's both. Mm-hmm. So how do we know what's in our premises and what's in our clouds? There are other challenges, though, and again, I'm gonna go to Hina for some of these, but the chaos that happens from the disintegration of analytics across the enterprise is probably the biggest challenge that we face today. It means we've lost control over the access of the analytics. We don't know where they are. We don't know how to get access to them. We've lost control, even worse, over the feedback loop, the ability to correct these analytics or modify them in some way, shape, or form, because we don't even know they exist. Anytime you crowdsource analytics, the viewing and usage of analytics, you're going to get a lot of good feedback about what's right, what's wrong. Mm-hmm. There's also the problem of, if I don't know it exists, I'm going to reinvent it again and again, and so is somebody else, and so is somebody else. That redundancy and that duplication of analytics is just deadly. It's a waste of all kinds of time and effort and everything else. And then there's that, gosh, okay, we're creating all of these. We know they're out there, but which ones are being used? Which ones are we going to keep? Which ones are we going to get rid of? Yes, we do get rid of some as they age out. But that's some of the challenges that we face. Hina, before I go into the benefits, talk to me a little bit about what you've seen in terms of challenges.
Well, all of the above. And I think I'll just summarize and say that it's the huge opportunity loss that I see in organizations where, as a result of spending time, money, effort, resources to sort of work in a silo and really, trying to drive self-service analytics, you're not able to do something that you should be focused on, right? So the opportunity loss in terms of lack of productivity, duplication, redundancy, whether it's, resources, compute power, it could be all of those, I think is the, sort of the summarization of all of those that you just listed, Claudia.
Yeah. Now, the good news is there are benefits galore, and I'm going to, go back one, and I'm going to talk about the benefits a little bit as well. And, we're kind of running long, so I'm going to try to make it as short as I can. The first one is the ability to use some kind of an analytics catalog, because that's going to build confidence. Trust. We know where it came from. We know who made it. We can contact that person. The second benefit is to the different constituents of an analytics environment. And I'm going to pause here because, Hina, you've got a wonderful description of who's going to be impacted by an analytics governance program. Talk about that a little.
Yeah, I think, I touched upon it earlier. I think there are three constituents, right, in this whole program. I think there is obviously the end users, and our goal is really just, to empower the end users with confident decision making. To do that, there is an ecosystem, and that ecosystem thrives today, given sort of this whole transformation in the analytics space and the data space, where we've empowered data engineers, data scientists, super user, power users to be able to create data and content. So if we have to really make that end user a confident end user as they're making the decisions, we've really got to empower the people that produce the data and the analytics. So we've really got to, look at them as a key constituent, right? And that's what we focus on, is how do we make these folks really the analytics steward? And we'll talk a little bit more about that. But and then the final one is the platform owners, right? The people who are really owning these environments. And that could be a combination of IT and business. And we know that there is a lot of ownership on technology today in the business as well. So I like to refer to them as platform owners, just so that we, can look at it more generically. But yeah, those are the three main constituents in my perspective.
And that leads to the next idea, which, not to the next slide, sorry, a couple of more benefits, sorry. And that's better guidance for the enterprise, because it is a program where it's a long-lasting thing, and we have guidance coming into the enterprise through that portal, if you will, throughout the whole thing. And then finally, a wonderful benefit of knowing what's out there. Knowing what's out there. Knowing what's out there is the cost savings, the reduction in opportunity losses. You had a great opportunity to do something, but you didn't know that the analytic already existed. You spent all that time recreating and so forth. The loss in, the gain in productivity, because you can find something fast. You can get access to it fast. You're not reinventing the wheel. So we're talking about time, money, effort, and all of that. And that all leads to the last benefit that I can think of, and that is less risk to the enterprise and better decisions, which is what the goal is to begin with anyway. Any comments before we go on to the next slide?
No, I think we are sort of running against time, so I'm gonna go to the next slide just so that we can cover everything we wanted to cover. But I think this is an important one, so I'll let you.
It is. I get asked this, and I'm sure the audience wants to ask it too, is who's responsible for this? Who's going to take on this little gem? What technology is available to govern analytics? Until recently, and quite honestly, until a company like ZenOptics came into existence, there really wasn't much except for maybe an Excel spreadsheet. But the main one is who's responsible for implementing and maintaining this technology? Will the executive support and fund the capability? And then the last one, which we can discuss as well, what other roles and responsibilities are needed? Hina, if you don't mind, I'd love to hear you talk about the analytics steward a little bit here in terms of their role, and are they responsible for this environment?
And Hina, I know that we're running short on time, but in terms of the analytics steward, we had a question come in about executives often have their own priorities. And so when you are in the stewardship role and trying to establish this governance program to be able to manage the assets, how do you convince the executives that this is something to prioritize as well. So I would love to add that into your description of the steward. I know we discussed this a lot internally, but I just wanted to mention that that was a question.
Okay. Yeah. No, I think it boils down to, one of the key characteristics of what we said is analytics governance and the success of it, which is that executive sponsorship. So in terms of being able to convince the executive leader that we need to invest in a program, the investment is in multiple areas, but people and process is a big component of it. The way I look at it is, this role of an analytics steward is a very critical role in terms of bringing those three constituents together. It could be an existing person in the organization that is today, your analytics SME. It's the person that, knows what's out there. It could be someone that sits in between IT and the business. It could be someone who sits within, today the whole organizational structure around analytics has changed. It's no longer that analytics is just an IT function. In fact, it's more so not so much an IT function, but it's almost like in between the IT and the business world or the functional areas where you have these super users. And honestly, in terms of the executives aligning with that, if there is an executive sponsor who's trying to build this program out, and it typically starts with one particular area or sort of, let's say it's procurement, let's say it's supply chain, let's say it's finance. A lot of times I see finance championing this. And what happens is as a result of that, typically finance has the largest amount of analytics in an organization, right? And it's very important. And so it starts with that. And it's a very natural progression once you've sort of committed to the program, right? It's the natural progression to pick someone as an analytics steward and start with rationalizing and understanding what exists. How do you then enhance that? How do you maintain the metadata? How do you make it better for the end users to consume that information? So that initial investment in time and effort on an analytics steward pays off, because once you've got that process set up, it's a continuous process and then it maintains itself, right? And we've already talked about how important it is that this is not a one and done. It is a continuous analytics lifecycle management journey. So I know we're running out of time, but I hope I addressed the question along with sort of addressing what Claudia asked, but yeah. I'm happy to talk more about it as well.
Thank you. I think, yes, we did try to keep this under half an hour, but we addressed the people and the processes component of this in our previous discussion. I know we wanted to talk a little bit about the technology. So if the attendees will indulge us for perhaps just another 3 to 5 minutes, 5 minutes. All right, we'll go for 5 minutes, perhaps demonstrating what this can look like with the people and processes alongside the technology. We can kind of expedite what we had hoped to cover just because we're having such fun in our discussion, but thank you for sticking with us as we talk about this. So go ahead, Hina.
Okay. And I'm not going to go through a lot of the slideware here, but I'll just jump into the demo. This is sort of what we already covered. It's all about the three constituents. We talked about, the individual users, the teams, and the leaders. And again, we'll focus on sort of the stewardship and the management, right? And I'm going to jump into the demo. So just give me a second while I get that up, because I know we are almost out of time, but I know we've convinced folks to stay for a little longer, right, Julie? So
yes, and if you have to jump, this will be recorded. So we would be happy to send you the link to the recording after the fact. So thank you for sticking with us.
All right, can you see my screen?
It's coming up. There we go.
Okay, all right. So I'm going to log in and I'm going to play the role of an analytics steward as I log in, right? But, just because I'm an analytics steward, it doesn't mean obviously that I'm not, running my own report, supporting my own business unit and my leaders to make decisions, right? But as someone who's looking at information in my daily job, now I am obviously coming into a very customized landing page that allows me to get to information quickly. I am, let's say, in the finance area, and I can jump directly into my finance reports, right? This allows me to, now, as part of my function, the fact that I have curated this experience, right, and picked and said that as someone looking at finance reports, I want to focus on the KPIs and metrics, right? So those are sort of the focus areas for me in terms of looking at that information. But I also want to be able to look at certain important reports. This is just one level of making sure that the information that is available here makes sense. Now, if I'm looking at this information and I'm responsible for finance, I'm a steward, I can see that a lot of my content, or I would say 50% of this content, is certified. If I go back into my dashboard and I'm looking at I'm sorry, I don't know what happened there. Just sort of doing my daily job, and I'm looking at the most viewed reports, I can see that net sales versus contribution margin is really an important report because I have 61 people looking at it. Let me look at some of the information, right? It's got a good description that describes it. I know who the business owner is, but for some reason, this report is not certified. So I'm going to go in, right? And I'm going to look at some more information about this. And I can see that it is actually in a certification stage, right? So it's past technical review. It's in the steward's court right now for review. And then it's going to go for a business review, right? Basically, even without this, being fully certified, the amount of information I have here that tells me where this report is coming from. This is the description from the source system, but I have enhanced it in ZenOptics to add more context to the report. I know the source of this report. I can now actually understand more information about what the fields are in this report. Obviously, the fact that all the metadata is approved leads to me initiating a certification process on it. As a steward, I can now go into my report governance portal and look at my tasks or look at the content list, right? And I can see right here that net sales versus contribution margin is queued for approval, right? And so that's where it is, in the process of being approved. As a steward responsible for this area and as a finance business owner, so to speak, I know that if I come into the glossary and I have really curated this information from a KPI perspective, I know that for net sales as a definition, my report net sales versus contribution margin should be available for review and should be available as a key report that supports the net sales definition. So once my certification process goes through, I expect that I should be able to look at all of the reports that are certified and not certified, right? So obviously net sales versus contribution margin will be here somewhere. This is a full list of reports that I have. And then obviously this is a set of, I can also see reports I don't have access to, but I could also do that very quickly when I'm trying to search for information. Let's say that I'm trying to, figure out what else my colleagues are building. So I can search and say, well, I know I work with Andres very on a daily basis. Let me look at some of the reports that he's working on, right? And so right now I can see that all the reports that Andres owns as a business owner are certified. And these are the 4 critical reports, obviously, that he has certified. I have access to these, right? And there's nothing else that he's created except the sales and margin report. I don't have access to this. I can now initiate a request for access process right from here. So I can click this, right? I get more information about this report. It's approved. I have trust and confidence that this is the report I want to request access to. I know Andreas is the business owner. I know the definitions. I know what this report is meant to do. I would like to request access for it, right? And so I can initiate that request for access process right from here. So I'm not lost, right? I understand it. My users understand it. I can guide users when they come to me and say, well, I'm looking for a very particular report and I'm trying to do some accounts payable analysis. Well, I'm going to guide you to a report that already exists, right? So I don't need to recreate that. So that's sort of me in my role as an analytics steward. But I also can do this through, not just at the report level, but the concept of being able to govern business processes. So as a financial analyst, I am responsible in my role for a month-end close business process. The month-end close business process is usually a very standard set of reports, KPIs, and metrics that people need to monitor. So I have created a workflow, and this workflow is shared with 4 people, right? So I'm going to go into the workflow just so you can see that. And it is the approved month and close process, which is based on a set of reports. There's an accounts payable report, an income statement report, a net sales versus contribution margin report, the net sales contribution transaction, where I can now actually interact with an ERP system. And I'm going to go into this, a spreadsheet, and an external foreign exchange currency website. I've also shared this with a few of my colleagues, right? And now I can just launch this. This obviously allows me to get, when I'm in the launch mode and I'm trying to actually run this, I apologize for that. I'm trying to run this report. The experience that I get is that I have now been able to set up my workspace to run to look at these reports sort of collectively, right? I don't have to go and do this one at a time, but I'm also able to look at the information, not just about the report. Obviously, the report is most important because I'm actually trying to facilitate the business process here. So I'm looking at the report. I'm running these reports, right? This is my accounts payable report. This is my income statement report. And again, I'm playing, in this case, when I've shared this with someone, they're able to have trust and confidence that this workflow has been, shared with me as the certified workflow for the month-end close process. So I can go through this and look at information across all of these different reports, different metrics. I can get into a spreadsheet. This is a SharePoint Excel document. I can go to a foreign exchange currency website. And now I am sure that everybody in my team that is responsible for this month-end close business process is using this workflow to make their decisions and or to do their analysis. So that addresses sort of the whole aspect of the teams, right? Along with, the analytics steward owning that, or the business process owner owning that responsibility, and having a way to do it, right? Having a platform where they can actually now make all of this visible and facilitate that analytics governance. But last but not the least, I wanted to cover the platform owners. So how do the platform owners understand what's going on, right? And we talked about the power of metadata. The power of metadata about analytics is the metadata around the analytics itself, but also about the usage. I'm just waiting. I don't know. I'm having an issue with, I guess, bandwidth, maybe. I'm not sure. So I'll go back to the CDAO dashboard because that will give you a really, a full perspective. But this is a starting out view of understanding the entire inventory of the platform, right? So obviously we have all of these systems connected. We can look at the inventory of these reports and you can see, how many of each of these reports you have, but really what is the usage? And you can see that the usage trend is completely different than the inventory. You have the most number of MicroStrategy reports, but that does not align with usage, right? And then you can actually understand what are the reports that have not been accessed over a certain period of time and start taking action. This is where you have the opportunity as the platform owner to now effect change in making sure that that opportunity loss of, having so much out there is reduced. And obviously it's a journey. It's not immediate, but it's a journey. It takes time. You've got to rationalize the information. You've got to understand, why was this created? Can it be removed? Who do we need to contact? And all of that information is available as you go into some of these reports here, and you can look at, well, what are these reports that have not been accessed over the last 3 months, right? There's 63 people that have access to it, and only 9 have used them. But the last access was, in April. So what do I need to do? Who do I need to contact? And that sort of information is available by looking at the information here and going into that process of rationalization. I'm going to try to see if I can bring up this now. Hopefully it will come up. Well, there you go. It may have just been okay. Yeah. So I'll just end with this. I'll just leave you with this in terms of a dashboard that you provide your CDAO, CDO, CAO, depending on who really is looking at trying to manage the environment. It's a one snapshot view of all the information. And obviously we use a lot of the metadata to mine this, right? And there's a lot of investment. And in our next talk, we'll talk a lot about what the future looks like, right? And what is the power of, what is the art of possible? So, here you get an immediate glimpse of number of assets, number of users, who's using what, number of workflows, and usage trends, monthly active users. Well, what is my duplicate reports? What's the redundancy out there? Who are the top 25 users? What are the top 25 reports? But guess what? What is also the top 10 uncertified reports based on usage? That's directly an action point, right? So I can now take action and go and look at these reports, right? And about 10,000 users this report has been run about 10,000 times by 253 users. So I better go look at what this report is and try to figure out why it's not certified. And then similarly with the ungoverned KPIs. So with that, I'm going to pause and hand it over to Julie.
Yes, and thank you, Hina. This helps. There's so much that we can offer in terms of enabling the stewards to be able to provide that consistency, that trusted environment, the unified view of all of the assets that are in the organization. I could go on and on. That's my job as a product marketer. But what I want to do, because the whole goal of these Zen Talks is to connect these experts that we have with the audience. Claudia, I know that you had additional thoughts about the earlier question about prioritizing governance with the executive leaders. And so I just want to make sure that we can, if the attendees will indulge us for another just few minutes, I would love your perspective as well. Oh, 1 minute. All right, go for it.
Well, first of all, thanks, Gail. It's good to see your name pop up, and thanks for your kind words. It's always nice to see. Her question was, the challenge to prioritization buy-in is usually architects who want their project first. The good news is that their project that they want first is usually the analytics project. They want the analytics, right? And the idea that we are creating a program here says that it's not a one-time deal. You're not waiting for this one project or these group of analytics. You're going to buy into the overall idea that you can share these things and get benefit from others who are sharing theirs with you. Julie, you said it good. You said it very well, that it's the programs, and they need to be tied into the strategic objectives of the company itself, of course. If the strategic objective is to make our employees more productive and make better decisions, then what better way can we implement and get that ROI than by creating this marketplace that says, stop reinventing the wheel, just stop, it's already there. So I think that's the difference between a buy-in from an executive who wants their project, which is the analytics, versus the program of let's make everybody much more productive. I hope that helped.
Yes, thank you, Claudia. I appreciate the additional insights, and I hope that answered some of the questions. We would be happy to follow up with anyone post-event, absolutely, and the recording will be available if you want to share it with people. Please join us on August 17th for the third installment of our Talks with Claudia, which will be wonderful. We're going to talk about some not really futuristic, but the art of possible and what that can look like, and what are relevant considerations and what are the opportunities that exist in the near future. So I want to thank both Hina and Claudia. Thank you so much for all of the conversations leading into this and for sharing your insights today. Thank you to the audience for joining us. We've loved having you today, and we look forward to our next time.
Thank you.
Have a great
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.